Welcome to Intelligent Think, the podcast in which we explore what makes ideas great, how we can make our thinking better, and why it's so important to share your ideas with the world. Plus, we'll be talking to thought leaders and authors about their own ideas and experiences so that you can mine them for gold nuggets. I'm Verity Craft.
I'm Christina Wedgwood.
And this is Intelligent Think.
And today we're going to talk about mindset, specifically the mindset that authors and thought leaders have and the one that they need to be able to get their ideas out there. I know I looked a lot at the reluctance of people sharing their ideas when I wrote my book, but there is so much more to it than that. So, Verity, tell me a little bit about, or start us off, I guess, with what you think we most commonly see. So hopefully we can share a bit of that and also what people can do to improve their mindset as well.
I think there's a couple of key mindsets that get in people's way when they are trying to build thought leadership when they're starting to write their book. And the one which you've already mentioned is kind of the reluctance, which I'll leave you to talk about because you're the one who actually wrote a book on it. But the other thing that I see all the time with books in particular is that people feel like they need to have everything lined up before they can get started. Like, it feels as though it's such a big project that the overwhelm makes them feel as though they have to have absolutely everything in place and to be absolutely perfect before they can even start. And I kind of liken it to, I wrote a post about it today actually, likening it to a hike. If you're hiking up a mountain, right? Is when you stand at the bottom and you look up, it looks really terrifying and you go, how am I meant to climb that? But much like when you're writing a book, really it's just about a few things. It's having a good map. So in a book's case, that's having your book blueprint. It's having the right gear, which is maybe, I don't know, your ideas and your framework. It's a good framework for writing a book. And then it's having people around you, because personally, I'm sure there are people who climb mountains by themselves, but I wouldn't want to. And it's the same thing for writing a book. And so I sort of like to equate it to that, because it's the same thing where it looks really overwhelming when you start, but actually once you start to take steps towards it, that's what builds that belief in you that, oh, I can do it, like I can make this. So to me, that feels like kind of the thing that gets in people's way the most. And that's, we talk about books because it's what we do, but I think that's the case with any big project, whether that's around your thought leadership or your business or anything like that, where the more overwhelming it feels and the bigger it feels, the more that people feel like they have to have everything in place before they can start.
Yeah, and I think too, I talked to Bill, I think, on his podcast recently, and he was asking me specifically having written books for other people before, what was easier and what was harder about doing your own. And I think one of the things that was easier, or that I had the benefit of, having done it before, was even though it was still overwhelming to face my book mountain, I could trust the process a little bit more. I knew how much was going to change along the way. So I didn't feel quite so paralyzed at the start to need everything. I knew my blueprint was going to evolve. I talk about the fact that I wrote it in pencil because I knew it was going to change, and that you can set off and kind of still find it a little bit as you go, and just trust you're going to get to somewhere good. And I don't think, had I not done that and seen that play out in so many other people's projects, that I would have maybe had that the benefit of that.
And not to call you out, but I think you in particular would not have necessarily felt that, because you are somebody who likes to have all of the information first and likes to feel really prepared and likes to know that, you're going to be able to do something. So actually, you're right. If you were somebody who hadn't done that with other people, maybe you wouldn't have even started.
No, exactly right. I think your plan, your plan's good, but your plan does shift, and that's quite a hard thing to tell people in the beginning, because they want to be able to trust their plan and go, cool, plan, tick, done, moving on. But yeah, the tangly bits usually lead somewhere better.
Well, and I think it's a bit of a catch-22 as well, because the plan is still a really important piece, even though it's going to change. Like, we've noticed when people have come to us with manuscripts that they've written already, 50,000 words or something, and they think they're nearly done. But when we look at it, there's still so much to do. And a big learning for us has been to get them to fill in the plan and be clear on, you know, what their vision is for the book, who the audience is, like what that core message is meant to be. Because actually, if you don't do that planning up front, it means even more reworking, and your structure will probably change and what goes into the book will probably change, but the why you're creating the book and who it's for and all of that, that is less likely to change, I think. And if you're not clear on that up front, it means that it's a little bit like if you're heading up a mountain, you know, it's setting out with a map going in the wrong direction, or it's setting out with no map and you end up off path and falling down into some gorse bush, like I remember doing as a 16-year-old at Outward Bound when they were like, here, you navigate rather than like kids navigate. And we ended up in these bushes that were scratchy and we went, I don't think this is the way we were meant to go.
What were you doing? Like a compass? Like orienteering?
Yeah, like you had a compass and like maps, but they were those ones that, you know, you could see here are the what are they called? Oh God, the lines.
The topographical.
Thanks. You can tell I paid a lot of attention.
Yeah. And it was reflected in the bushes. You ended up loving.
But I kind of see it the same way. It's like, you know, you're going to change where you go, but the goal still needs to be really clear, and the goal still needs to be the same.
You know where the summit is.
Yeah.
I think is the point there. I think even the readiness thing is a real mindset too, though. Like, people don't necessarily think that they are expert enough, or do I have something valuable to say, because what they do is really simple to them, like, because they do it, right? It's like you can't tell that you're swimming in water when you're a goldfish, because that's just the context that you're in, right? So I think people can't tell that they've got expertise or something of value. How do you think that we can better help people overcome that?
I think there's a couple of ways, one of which is pre-book, which is people need to understand that the more that they take action, the more that they'll realize that they can do something. Like I think that that's a really interesting thing around confidence, and I've always been confident. I was kind of born this way, very grateful for it. But I think one of the reasons that I've stayed confident is that I tend to just do stuff and keep doing stuff. And so I keep proving to myself, oh, then I can do stuff and I can learn new stuff and I can try something different. And I think what we find with clients and friends and family and kids is that the more that you do something and take action towards something, the more that you believe you can do it. And so I feel like with anything to do with thought leadership, it's getting started in some way. So it's making sure that you are sharing your ideas. You know, maybe it's first just with a friend or with a colleague. And maybe it's then, okay, I'm going to post on LinkedIn, or I'm going to post on TikTok, or whatever your channel is. And maybe it's then, okay, well, now that I've done that and I've got some feedback, now I could create a resource and see if that's valuable for people. And I feel like it's building up to that, but recognizing that there's no end point. Like, it's not I'm going to get my ideas to this point and they're going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly evolving and we're constantly learning. And I like to say that if you're not a bit embarrassed of what you put out there 5 years ago, then you probably haven't learned enough.
No.
And I know that we are very embarrassed by a lot of stuff that we put out in the past.
And probably you waited too long as
Yes.
well. Like, you sat on it for too long if you can't look back on it and kind of cringe slightly. Yeah, I think that's important too. Blank. Blinking.
I think the other element of mindset that I think is really important is recognizing how, and this is something we talked about in our first episode, is how important talking to other people is for it. Like, the more that you stay stuck in your own head.
Yes.
Especially for people who maybe their heads are not always the healthiest places to be stuck.
Friendliest.
Exactly. I think the more that you can talk to other people, whether that is, you know, the people around you that you know and love, whether that is people who've done the journey before, so other people who've written a book, whether that's experts in the field, whether that's your audience and the people who want to engage with your ideas, the more that you can get out of your own head and into conversation, or in whatever form that is, whether that's in person or online, the more that you can do that, the more that you overcome that sense of I'm not ready or I can't do this, because you're getting feedback from people that actually there is value in what you have to say.
I wrote a case study recently about a guy who left his corporate job to go and set up like his own sort of consulting, and basically he was having a big impact in the organization that he worked in, but he thought, if I take this outside of this corporate space, I can have that bigger impact on like exponentially more people, right? And the thing that he said gave him the most confidence to do that was he started getting messages from people and feedback from people that like, oh, the thing you said about such and such, I went and did this and this thing changed or happened. And, you know, what you said about such and this thing changed my life, or whatever. I did something with that tool that you shared or whatever. And so he said it took not just, you know, one or two of those bits of feedback. At first he was like, oh, wow, okay. Didn't really, what is happening here? But because some of them were messages from strangers too, because he was sharing his stuff more widely, but he still had the safety of his corporate environment, I guess. But then he said, you know, eventually there were hundreds or thousands of those things. I've heard people talk about collecting like a brag bag of like the lovely bits of feedback and stuff that you receive. And so do I now. And I think one of the things I said in the book was, you know, you know that you're not finished and you're not ready and your ideas are not fully formed and they never will be. So you can let go of that. But you can also look for evidence that what you're doing now is working and having an impact, and that can kind of give you the solid base from which to start putting stuff out there, because you can trust or like be backed by the fact that there's something, there is something to what you're saying already, and you've got real life feedback of that.
I think it's one of the reasons that we like working with thought leaders who have businesses or, you know, are working in this space already, because there's, you know, there are some amazing thought leaders who came out of academia. But I think the thing that we find is really valuable for thought leaders is when they've got actual evidence of, I've done this with people and it helps. And I think that's helpful in two ways, one of which is that it's proof for your audience that, yes, it works, because they can see other people that have done it. But the other reason is that it gives you the confidence that, oh, no, I know this works and I can believe that this works. And then it makes you feel more confident and more equipped to start to share that, even if, as you say, it's not ready, because we're never fully ready. You know, there's no such thing as perfection.
No, there's no such thing as done either. I think that's the virtuous cycle I love the most about thought leadership and practicing thought leaders, is that also the stuff that they're doing, their thinking then feeds back into the delivery and makes that better, but they get their feedback loops, like you say, are so much shorter. Which helps.
Yeah, I love that too.
But what about specifically, you know, we know that even between thought leadership and books, there are some different mindset niggles. One of the ones that we've talked about a bit recently around books specifically is that sort of, people think that they're at the top of the mountain when they've written their manuscript. Maybe they've edited their manuscript and they're like, this is tidy, this is good. But then someone comes along, and often that someone is us, which is kind of a sucky part of the job, to be honest, and go, yeah, you're not actually, like, it's not as done as you
There's a whole other summit to climb.
Yeah, you're actually at this plateau here, and you look up, there's still some more climb. And that can be a real, like, quite crushing for some people, I think, because they've poured so much into that first bit, they don't realise that there's still more climbing to do.
Yeah, and I feel like we've started becoming a lot more open about the fact that that's going to happen, because we've seen it happen quite a few times with clients where they get to that point and they're really excited, and then they realise how much work is still to go, and it's a bit of a downer. So we've started trying to like prep people for it and be prepared for it. So I think that's one of the first things, is be prepared for it. The fact that when you finish your first draft, you're not finished your draft. Well, you're finished your first draft, but was it Ernest Hemingway who said the first draft of anything is shit?
Yeah, we used to have it in the stairwell.
We did. Poster. We used to have it in the stairwell at our old office. And I think that that's the first thing, is to remember that what you're doing is drafting. You haven't written your book when you've written your draft. and that the magic happens in the editing. Like, I think that's the other thing to remember is one of the things we suggest is try and write as much of your book as possible without editing, because the more that you get into the editing while you're writing, the harder it is to keep momentum going and get as much of it as possible. But at the same time, know that when you do get to the editing, that is where you get to a great book. Like, a great book is not written in the first draft. An okay piece of content is maybe written in the first draft, but the editing is where the magic happens, because that's when you can see the whole picture, and that's where you can really identify how will this book be for the person who's going to read it, and how's it going to impact on them. And we recently decided that one of our new updated values is going to be we see the wood and the trees, because actually when you're writing a book, that's really important. You've got to be able to see the big picture, so the wood, and be able to see, is this going in the direction that I want it to go? Does it flow for the reader? Does it make sense? Is it going to take them where I want it to take them? But you also then need to do all of the trees, all of those details, and like make sure that you've backed up your claims, and that when you refer back to something that you have, you've referred back to the right place, or that you've referenced things properly. And so I think people find that quite hard, because most people are quite good at one or the other of those things. So either they're like, oh yeah, it works overall and I don't want to think about the details, or they're so caught up in the details that they forget that that's where the magic happens, is how you get that journey working. So I think it's just being aware that that's going to happen helps with that, but B, I like to kind of get people excited about the fact that that is the cool bit. Like,
it's the crafting.
It's the crafting, and that's where all the magic comes. And I want people to, I think people look at editing as like this drudge process. And sometimes, honestly, we look at it as a drudge process, because it feels really creative to write from scratch. But actually the cool stuff happens when you edit.
It's like when you write it down the first time in your first draft, you're meeting the ideas for the first time, and then you kind of have to dance with them a bit, I think, to be, a bit flowery and poetic. But you do, like, you're never going to hit it off perfectly with someone on your first meeting. You've got to get to know each other.
Well, we sometimes say that publishing a book is a bit like your wedding day, and then you've got to be married to your ideas for a while. But I suppose it's important that before you get married,
it's quite a long courtship.
It's quite a lot of courtship, exactly, and that you've really gotten to know those ideas and make sure that they're the right fit for you before you marry them.
Many dates.
I love that. One of the people in the Better Book Project who has now published her book a year ago or so, is the amazing Dr. Bex Bell, and she talks about turning your inner critic to your inner coach, which is her book, Inner Critic to Inner Coach. Everyone should check it out if they haven't. It's bloody awesome.
If we do say so
ourselves.
If
we do say so ourselves, but it's all Bex magic. We just facilitated it. And she talks a lot about not getting rid of those bad feelings, like not ignoring the bad feelings, not tamping down the critical thoughts that you have in your head, but instead almost making friends with them and like acknowledging it. Have you found you had to implement any of that in your own book journey or life?
Yeah, I think it was a real exercise in mindfulness, because I brought together definitely Bex's approach with a few other kind of mindful teachings of that idea of like, welcome it in, but you don't have to give it a chair. And the bit that Bex said that really resonated with me was, you cannot deal with something in a constructive way if you're treating it like the enemy. So actually, there's so much around about banishing the negative thoughts and, fighting against imposter syndrome and stuff. And that's fine if you want to do that. But actually, this less combative approach of like, you're there, but you're not running the show, I found way more helpful. Like, yeah, you're going to have those things. And I think the thing I say in the book too, where I borrow a little bit of Bex's idea and add to it from a thought leadership point of view, is when you're pushing to the edge of your comfort zone, it's normal and natural to feel those things, and everybody does. So once you kind of accept the universalness of feeling that way, also the the fact that it shows you that you care about something, like if you didn't care about what you were doing, that voice would just stay quiet, right? So if it gets a bit shouty, it's because you're really on purpose for what you want to do. So in some ways, I sort of learnt to, mainly because I was telling other people to do this, but I learnt to celebrate that it was there as a good thing, as opposed to letting it derail.
I love that. I really like Bex's one around if you want a constructive relationship, you can't treat it as the enemy, because it immediately just made me think, yeah, you can't do that in like a real relationship either.
No, exactly.
Like with my husband, if I thought of him as the enemy the whole time, we're not going to solve any issues because we're just constantly going at each other. And so I think thinking of your mind and your inner critic and imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, thinking of it in that way as just part of you and, it's not the enemy, is a really powerful shift away from, I think, the way that a lot of people have talked about mindset in the past. And we often recommend the book The Antidote by Oliver Burkeman to people because A, it's just a great read. I think it's a really well-written book. But B, I really love the way that he approaches kind of this cult of positive thinking and the idea that actually if you just bring enough positivity in, that will make you feel better, and kind of all the proof is suggesting the opposite. That just forcing yourself to think positive thoughts or be positive is not going to help you actually be more positive. And so I really like that approach of just going, oh yeah, that's how I'm feeling. There's some shit going on in my head. How can I use that? How can I leverage that? How can I make friends with that? Or go, yep, you've got a place, but actually I've got some other stuff to do first.
Yeah, stay at the party, but, we're not giving you the mic, kind of. you don't get the microphone. I think one of the other strategies that has helped, and, spoiler alert, it's come from cognitive behavior therapy and all sorts of things over the years, is also not seeing yourself as your thoughts. So you've got to have a little bit of distance from them. And I think that's why I love so much the idea that that voice can come to the party but not get the microphone, is that you are not your thoughts. You are not the voice in your head. It's just kind of one of many, and you can turn its volume up and down. But also it's why I then believe in the brag bag kind of piece as well. You need to, I used to, when I was struggling with anxiety and things like that, I used to have to look for evidence. And so I would collect, and I almost imagined like this little filing cabinet or something in my brain, right? And I was just filing away little pieces of like, yes, but you have done that, so therefore you can do that. And nobody died, and like nothing, the world didn't end, and all of those little pieces of evidence eventually kind of snowball into a bit of confidence too. So I think there's a dual thing of maybe turning down that voice, knowing that it's not calling all the shots, and keeping on building the positive evidence that what you're doing matters or is working or is delivering value to people.
I love it, because I feel like it's so relevant no matter what you're doing in life, like whether it's writing a book, whether it's just building thought leadership, whether it's growing a business, whether it is just surviving through the day. Like having that combo of turning down the not great voice with the finding or collecting evidence that actually you can do it, because that's really what we talk about with a book as well. It's why starting it is really important, because you're collecting evidence that actually you can write a book. I think that's a really powerful combo. I also find it really interesting because I don't have a voice in my head. And I only learned recently that this is like a thing, that some people have like an actual voice that's like talking to them in their head. I don't have that. What? This is what I mean.
It's so quiet. How is it so quiet in there then?
Well, I'm just thinking, but there's no one talking to me.
Right.
Yeah, I read it. I saw an Instagram post that was like, people either have a voice in their head or they don't. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't have a voice in my head. And all these people in the comments were like, wait a minute, what do you mean you don't have a voice in your head? And other people were like, what do you mean you have a voice in your head? Wow. I don't think I have a voice in my head. I just like think things, but I don't have any, like, do you have someone talking to you?
No, I can't tell you what like the voice sounds like or something. It's not like a...
But like it's putting,
American
like it's saying
man
things to you almost.
Well, yeah, but I guess maybe they are just thoughts, but I think I don't know, I feel like my thoughts go so quickly and they kind of sometimes pile on top of each other that it seems like there's more than one speaker. Like there's not just one stream of consciousness or thinking.
Yeah.
It's like they're all interjecting. It can get quite noisy up there. And so I've always thought of that as like different points of view coming in.
That's so interesting. And then I'm just thinking, well, mine's often quite busy, but it's often like, oh, we could do this and we could do this and we could do this and we could do
skitzing around.
Yeah. 100%. It's just like, what are all of the things that we could possibly do? I feel like that's the difference between our brains. Your brain is going, what are all the things that could go wrong? And my brain's going, what are all the things we could do? And that's why together we're a good combo.
It is. And that's exactly the point, V. You need sometimes it's perspective that can pull you out of the loops and things, but it's also why I think for mindset, who you surround yourself with is important. And we know that for books, but we also know that for life, right? Like who is around you. Even I've been learning a little bit about like nervous systems and nervous system regulation, and this bit I saw yesterday was related to the fact that if you are with someone else who's really dysregulated, to actually try and keep your, like we sort of merge into or become, our nervous system matches up, syncs up with their nervous system if we're around them. Like think about one of your kids like having a total meltdown or whatever, to keep yourself from kind of like heightening or whatever is tricky. And so yeah, there's strategies to do that, but equally that can work for the positive as well. So if we are around people who are calm and positive and encouraging and all of those things, then that can help pull us out of the mindset traps.
I think of it with, I mean, it's a parenting thing again, but like Dr. Becky always, all of her programs, workshops, whatever you'd call them, there's always a piece at the start of like the you and touching base with you and what are the things that trigger you in this situation and stuff. And I think it's such an important piece because, as you say, like otherwise it just carries over to kids if we're being triggered by stuff. But I love that, yeah, you can then apply that to other areas of your life as well, where you go, actually, if I want to be in this space, who am I surrounding myself with that I can then sync up with them? And obviously there's still a piece of you needing to do that. Like I sometimes find it a little bit tricky when I'm in a group where lots of people are negative, because I am generally, I'm not a positive person and like everything has to be positive, but like I don't struggle with anxiety. I don't struggle with depression. I am generally quite like, my brain switches to the positive quite easily. And so often I'm the person who's like, all right, let's bring the like
rallying the
the energy and stuff. But put me in a group with enough people who are quite down and stuff, is I do notice the, like how that impacts on the way that I feel. And so I've never thought of that as being like a nervous system thing, but it's true. It's sort of, everyone's energy is contagious, right?
Yeah, and it kind of poisons the water, or it doesn't, or it cleans the water. I remember my sister-in-law needed to come back, they were living in Australia, and that she needed to come back to New Zealand for 6 months for a contract, in particular like work secondment. And she had we were very surprised, like pleasantly surprised, but surprised when she said, hey, can I stay with you for that period of time? And I thought she had a really good friend that I was like, sure, she'd be the obvious one that she'd go and live with. But that was the comment actually that she made to us just quietly, was she can be quite negative. She just looks, yes, we're good friends, but she looks at the world in a different way, maybe a glass half empty way more so. And I don't know that I could enjoy living with that. Whereas, yeah, an uplifting environment, I mean, we're not Pollyannas or happy all the time or whatever here either, but, you know, we are positive and go after things and believe in stuff. And yeah, she had picked that would be a nicer place to...
That's really interesting. I hope the friend doesn't listen to this.
No.
You're right. Like it's you. We've all got a friend who you go, I love you, but I couldn't spend too long with you.
Short doses.
Yeah,
Short doses
exactly. And I think that when you then are applying that principle to your business or your book or your thought leadership in general, that's where it's really important, because, you know, they say that whole, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's very, very true. I don't know if it's quite like the 5. And also I have a little bit of an issue with people who are like, you're the sum of it, so cut out people who are, you know, not adding to your life. Because I'm like, people add value in different ways. Yeah. But I do think that it's really important that when you are in the mode of, I'm trying to achieve this thing, whatever that is, whether it's growing a business or writing your book or building a speaking career, whatever, that when you are focusing on that piece and when you're working towards it, you are spending more of your time with people who are going to encourage you along the way, who can bring different perspectives, who can pull you out of those darker times and stuff. Because while you still might then go and have friends who maybe are a little bit negative, you want the actions that you're taking towards that goal to be supported by all of those other people.
And I think it's why we look for, when we're doing something big, we look for role models, right? We either want to be alongside people who are doing it too, because that's a shared experience and that's quite powerful, or we want to learn from people who have done it already. But yeah, I think everyone needs a few cheerleaders too. Like they need people that believe in them maybe even more than they sometimes believe in themselves. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Especially if it's something that you struggle with in terms of like low self-confidence or anything like that. But actually, to be fair, I have the most confidence of anyone that I know, and I still like having cheerleaders. Exactly. It's still nice to have people be like, you're awesome. And I'm like, thank you, I am. It still feels good regardless. But I also think it ties in with what we were talking about with the inner critic. It's like you want some cheerleaders, but you also don't want people who are just going to say, of course you can do it, you're amazing, blah, blah, blah. Like, you also need people who are going to challenge you and who are going to call you out when maybe you're not displaying your best traits or doing your best work in a kind and supportive way, kind of what we talked about in the first episode with thinking partners. You need both of those. You can't just have cheerleaders and expect that to get you to the finish line, because that's where that toxic positivity comes in. And so it's who are the people around you that are going to, yes, lift you up and support you, but also challenge you in a way that, you know, will help you get to the end result better.
That's the in service of better thing, I think, that we talked about last time, is when someone else also believes in the outcome that you're going for, then their challenge is going to come with a layer of kindness and constructiveness and stuff, because they're also trying to help you get to, or, you know, maybe even get there with you to that positive, better state somehow.
In your work writing your own book, which for those of you who don't know, it's called Better, A More Authentic Path for the Reluctant Thought Leader. Check it out. Always ready with a promo. You very much talk about, like, you've got your 4 principles of better, kind of the 4 principles that if you do these things, it will lead to better thought leadership, it will lead to better ideas, it will lead to better outcomes. But I also wanted to just ask you a little bit about, like, what do you think is getting in the way for those reluctant thought leaders? You know, you've talked a bit about how there's sort of a sage on the stage kind of persona, and people seem to think, oh, if I want to be a thought leader, I've got to be like a Simon Sinek or something like that. What do you think gets in the way the most for people?
I want to answer this in 2 ways. So just in case I go round in a circle and can't get to the second one, I'm just saying that now so you'll pop me there. But the first one is, I think the biggest thing about the archetype and why I was trying to dismantle that fast-talking, charismatic, smooth model that we think of when we think of thought leader, or influencer, or whoever, fill in blank. The biggest disservice that does for a whole portion of the population is we just can't identify with that. So we think, you know, they're successfully doing that because they are these things. but that's not me. That doesn't feel like me. And the effort or the energy or the just selling out or the whatever it would take to muster that, we don't have that. So that was the first part, is I wanted to say to people, you don't have to be that to be effective. Yes, it is effective, but there are all these other ways that have value as well and that will resonate with people. The other part, the second thing, was I developed this whole model for the book that never made it in there. It was one of the darlings that I had to kill on the way. And I looked at sort of some categories of reluctance that I kept seeing, and they, over and over, they showed up broadly. And one of them was the overthinking reluctance. So it's the when you're spinning your wheels in the idea and it never feels finished and it never feels done, and it can show up a little bit in, like, I've called it procrastinating last time, but procrastinating, or you think, I need to get another qualification, or I need to read X more books, or I need to work with these more people, or I'm not done, I'm not ready. That's often because we're overthinking. The other one is, or another one is, the nothing special form of reluctance, and that's the sort of expertise curse of, we can't tell that what we know is valuable because to us it seems obvious because we've been doing it and we've learned it inside out. So we think there's, anyone else knows what I know, or they would do the same thing in the same situation. So that's the nothing special one. There's also I'm missing the third in my mind. I'm going to tell you the fourth one and hope that the third one comes back. But the fourth one is the sort of, I called it almost like a servant reluctance. And I've seen this in a couple of really specific people, but across the board as well. And that is the idea that they're so hell-bent on giving value and on showing up in a generous way in their relationships and stuff, that they don't like the idea that they might exploit that, or that they might benefit in any way from the thing. So even asking for help to get a message out wider feels like they're taking something, or they're calling in a favor, or they're trying to elevate themselves, and that's uncomfortable. So I often have to flip that for people to go, no, but you're doing a better service to people by letting more people have access to that idea. Like, we know that what you're sharing is valuable, so therefore stop getting in the way of more people having the benefit of you. Overthinking. So it was overthinking, servant, nothing special. I do not know.
It'll probably come back to you in a minute.
It will.
I was going to say on the servant one, I find that really interesting because I think that's similar with people who worry about making lots of money from their ideas when they care about helping people. And often I think a really helpful reframe with that, for us, I think that's been a challenge as well. A really helpful reframe with that has been going, if you do not have enough money to live on, if you're stressed about, money, or if you, are just a bare bonesing, a business, then you are going to have limited impact compared to what you could have if you've got financial resources to then put into getting that impact.
Or
wider.
worse, potentially worse, you're not sustainable.
Yeah.
Which means, therefore, your future ability to deliver that thing or make that better or give that value is called into question severely. Like, if you can't keep going, then actually the good stuff you're doing ceases.
Yeah.
I think that's very true. And I think it happens even more dangerously with people who are living and working really aligned to their purpose, because they're like, well, I just so believe in doing this. It's like we've been challenged on, if you would do this for free because you love it, like if there was another way to buy your groceries, you would probably still do what you do. You've still got to make sure that you're not doing it for free, because you can't keep doing it for free and then it all just falls down.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think when we were in our last planning, you said, yeah, I would do this for free. And I was like, I wouldn't, so we need to do that. And it's not because I don't love it, because I love it. But I'm like, let's be honest. If I didn't need money, I would just be like doing shows the whole time and like hanging out with my kids. Actually, that's a lie. I'd get so bored so quickly. I'd have to do more stuff.
I would do this, truly, like hand on heart. I would do this. So,
I'd probably still end up talking everyone's ears off and giving advice anyway.
Most likely.
I love that. What do you think? So we've talked about a few of the things already in terms of like Bex and the inner critic to inner coach and a few other things. But was there anything else that came up in your book that, you know, with your research and what you kind of tested out with people that you found was really helpful for what helps people shift away from some of those mindsets and some of those feeling stuck states?
The limiting beliefs. Getting past the limiting beliefs. I think definitely accept that they're there and that everyone has them. Welcome it in, but don't give it the microphone. That would be one of them. I think also the knowledge that it means that you're onto something or doing something important. I think one of the risks that we have is we feel the imposter syndrome or that negative voice and we think, oh, maybe I'm straying too far out of my lane or pushing somewhere that I have no right to be, sort of. And that's not true at all. It's often exactly the opposite, like actually that you're just pressing forward to somewhere you haven't been yet. But the other thing I'd say is have people around you. I can't recall if there's, nothing else is coming. In terms of other tips, the people that I was with when I wrote the book, like Dave, but also the other people in the Better Book Project and the people that had done the Better Book Project before us and the one-on-one clients that were all cheering me on, were such a game-changing difference. Having a community of people who believed in what you were doing, and even a husband and some friends that did too, like that made all the difference really. They can't rewire what's in your head, but they can lift you out of it for a minute, like sometimes literally lift you off the floor, and sort of say keep going, just give you like that little next step. And if they can propel you to action, just like you said, we gain confidence. We don't need to gain all the confidence to do the thing. We gain confidence by doing the thing. So just keep doing it.
I love it. I feel like that's a good place to stop.
Keep going.
Just keep swimming.
Keep swimming.
Well, that was lovely. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. You've been listening to Intelligent Think with Verity and Christina Wedgwood, brought to you by Intelligent Inc. Thanks to Lochana Media for our video production, Jeff Ong for our theme music, and to you for listening/watching. Who knows, there might be some of you on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a review. And here is to more better thinking.